Presiding over a wealthy and thriving realm with an army of dragons at their command, House Targaryen reached the end of their golden age, beginning a slow decline towards their eventual fall. Yet while Viserys I was not as wise, cunning, or skilled at arms as Jaehaerys I, he was an amiable and good-natured ruler, well loved by the people, who relied on his advisors to govern, while he concerned himself chiefly with keeping the hard-won peace left to him by his grandfather. Unfortunately, he ultimately failed in this task, and left the realm torn in two on the brink of the worst civil war in their history. However, conflict stemmed not from his policies or administration, but from the issue of succession which arose after he married his cousin Aemma, who produced two sons which both died in their infancy, and a girl named Rhaenyra, who grew into a beautiful, fearsome, and proud Targaryen dragon rider. After the death of his wife in childbirth, Viserys feared his lack of a son might lead the people to rally behind his wild and volatile brother Daemon as heir. Believing he was unfit for the throne, Viserys decided to name his only living child, Rhaenyra, as heir to the Seven Kingdoms in 105 AC, with a great many lords and knights swearing their allegiance. Yet the notion of naming a daughter was controversial and set the stage for future conflict, as the Council of 101 AC, which chose Viserys over his aunt and cousins, stated that a woman cannot inherit the crown if an eligible male is available, in this case the king's younger brother, the rogue prince Daemon Targaryen. However, because of Daemon's brash nature, he had little support among the nobility, and so the true conflict came from the events of 106 AC, when Viserys took a second wife, marrying Alicent Hightower, who in their years together gave him 3 sons and a daughter, naming them Aegon, Helaena, Aemond, and Daeron. The eldest child Aegon then married Helaena and produced Jaehaera, Jaehaerys, and Maelor. With a number of male sons and grandsons now available, some started to push for a new heir to be named, but Viserys refused, continuing to train his beloved daughter Rhaenyra to rule, marrying her to Laenor Velaryon, with whom she had 3 children of her own, in Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey. Though the king was clear on the succession, his wife Queen Alicent refused to accept it, and constantly pushed for her son Aegon to be the heir. Helping her case was the controversy surrounding Rhaenyra's children, as they all had brown hair and looked nothing like their supposed father Laenor, who was rumored to be gay, instead believed to be the bastard children of Sir Harwin Strong. With the tales about the princess spreading, many flocked to Queen Alicent and her Green faction, but they were fiercely opposed by Rhaenyra and her Black faction, who had allies of their own, supported by one of the richest and most powerful families in House Velaryon, as well as the rogue prince Daemon Targaryen, a veteran fighter who reigned shortly as King of the Stepstones, while living in exile from Westeros. A dragon rider and experienced commander, with many loyal soldiers at his call, Daemon Targaryen married his niece Princess Rhaenyra after the death of both their spouses, resulting in the birth of Aegon, Viserys, and Visenya. The king hated seeing his family divided and often tried to reconcile them, but the division only grew worse, with even the children getting involved, when Aemon Targaryen took the dragon Vhagar without permission, leading to a confrontation with Rhaenyra's sons, where Lucerys slashed out his eye with a knife. Even the dragons were divided, snapping and hissing at each other after sensing the animosity of their riders. In the year 129 AC, Viserys I died in his sleep, having in many ways been an excellent king, as he left the realm wealthy and prosperous. Yet no matter how many times he reiterated that Rhaenyra was his heir, his inability to prevent factionalism meant the issue of succession was never resolved. And so immediately following his death, the Greens of Queen Alicent Hightower made the first move, as they lived in King's Landing while Rhaenyra lived on Dragonstone. For 7 days, the Greens kept the death of Viserys secret, so they could remove and replace their enemies at court, until finally the Kingsguard Sir Criston Cole crowned Aegon II as King of the Seven Kingdoms, justifying their actions by claiming that the Council of 101 AC stated a woman could not inherit over a man, regardless of what the deceased ruler wanted. Over on Dragonstone, Rhaenyra was pregnant with her 6th child when she heard that her father was dead and younger brother usurped the throne. Sent into a terrible fury, she went into early labor and lost the child, only further enraging her against Aegon, Alicent, and their supporters. Gathering her allies, she was crowned the true queen of the Seven Kingdoms, and the two factions went to war. Yet this was no simple military conflict, as both sides possessed a great many dragons, which would devastate the land and people of the continent. Over the course of 2 years, Westeros descended into a chaotic frenzy of death and violence, with such notable events like the Pact of Ice and Fire, which created an alliance between the Blacks and House Stark, the Dance of Shipbreakers Bay, where the first battle between dragon riders resulted in the death of Viserys and Arax, the retribution of Blood and Cheese, 2 low-born killers who murdered young Jaehaerys in front of his mother Helaena, the rise of the Dragon Seeds, where anyone with traces of Valyrian blood could attempt to tame a dragon and join the Black faction, the raids of the Red Kraken who terrorized the western coast, the battle above the God's Eye, which left Daemon Targaryen, Aemon Targaryen, Vhagar, and Caraxes all dead, the storming of the Dragon Pit and riot of King's Landing, which left many dragons and people dead, and the deaths of both Rhaenyra and Aegon II, leaving King's Landing temporarily without a Targaryen ruler, leading to the rise of 3 petty kings who were soon deposed. After the assassination of Aegon II at the hands of his own advisors, who wanted to prevent Cregan Stark from massacring everyone in retaliation for the death of his queen, Rhaenyra's eldest living son, Aegon III, was crowned King of Westeros. Furious that the Northmen were denied battle, Cregan Stark took charge of King's Landing in what was called the Hour of the Wolf, arresting those responsible for the assassination and stabilizing the city before he returned home to Winterfell with a new wife and the friendship of the Iron Throne. Yet Aegon III was only 11 at the time of his coronation, and so a council of regents ruled in his name, men and women who for the most part were simply ambitious nobles, primarily concerned with plotting against each other for power. The king himself was good-natured, but quiet and sullen, deeply traumatized by the Dance of the Dragons, where he lost so many members of his family, including his mother, who was burned alive by dragonfire while he watched. As a result, Aegon had almost no influence in the administration of the realm, rarely saying or doing anything beyond what he was told. In the few instances where the boy did try to speak or offer suggestions, his power-hungry regents ignored and dismissed him, even taking Daemon Palehair, Aegon's only friend, and whipping him whenever the king misbehaved. To help heal the realm after the Civil War, Aegon III was married to his cousin Jaehaera Targaryen, last living child of Aegon II, but she was a simple girl who displayed little emotion and killed herself 2 years after their marriage, though some suspect she was murdered by the hand of the king, Lord Unwin Peake, as part of a plot to wed the king to his daughter Miriel. Given his level of influence in the capital, Unwin Peake ensured Aegon spent a lot of time with his daughter, even while the other lords of the realm sent the young women of their houses to win his favor in the Maiden's Day Ball. The king, however, had no interest in any of it, and was so detached from what was happening around him, he most likely would have chosen Miriel simply because she was always near him, and it was what the Hand wanted. Yet at the last moment, the king was rescued from the situation through the interference of the only people in the entire world he trusted, and that was his half-sisters, Baela and Rhaena, the daughters of Daemon Targaryen and his first wife Laena Velaryon. The 2 young dragon riders brought with them a sweet and beautiful 6-year-old girl named Daenerys of House Velaryon, presenting her to Aegon, who readily agreed to the match, thereby foiling the plot of House Peake. In 134 AC, Lord Alan Velaryon returned from a trip overseas with a present for Aegon, bringing forth the king's younger brother Viserys, who everyone thought was killed in the Dance of the Dragons, but had actually been taken to Lys. Aegon was thrilled to have his brother back, and also accepted several members of House Rogaire into the court, as Viserys was now married to Lara Rogaire, the daughter of a wealthy banking family. Despite some things getting better for the young ruler, many more challenges awaited him, as his friend Daemon Palehair soon died of poisoning in an attempted assassination of the king. Matters then grew worse when word reached the capital that House Rogaire had fallen from grace in Lys, leading their enemies in Westeros to start arresting them, even going after the wife of the prince Viserys. Outraged to learn that his counselors and regents were plotting against his own family, King Aegon's days of passivity and indifference were gone, and he retreated into Maegor's Holdfast alongside his wife, brother, sister-in-law, and a former pit-fighting champion in service to the Rogaires, known as Sandok the Shadow. For 18 days, they were held in a secret siege, refusing to give up Lara Rogaire, and making it clear that any man who tried to storm the tower would die. When an attempt to use violence was made, Sandok the Shadow massacred Sir Armory Peake and a dozen guardsmen. As time went on, some started to see that the king would not be moved, and further investigation revealed that the Rogers were being falsely accused of treason by a group of conspirators that included the Lord Confessor, George Graceford, and the Kingsguard Mervyn Flowers. With the siege ended, new regents were named for the final year of the king's minority, and once again Aegon seemed to retreat into the background. However, when at last his name day arrived in the year 136 AC, 16-year-old Aegon immediately took action, no longer willing to tolerate all those who disregarded and marginalized his wishes. And so the reign of Aegon the Broken King began, when he stormed into a meeting of the Small Council alongside his brother and dismissed all his regents and the Hand of the King, canceling any and all plans underway. Love Game of Thrones? Then be sure to check out the new book, The Thrones Effect, written by a number of respected A Song of Ice and Fire YouTubers, including GOT Academy, Because Geek, Secrets of the Citadel, Grey Area, Ideas of Ice and Fire, History of Westeros, and Smokescreen, with Chapter 5, titled Eye of the Beholder, written by CivilizationEx, exploring the various ways the characters and story can be interpreted, as well as how the audience reacted to their decisions. If interested, click on the link in the description box below, where The Thrones Effect is available as a physical copy, ebook, and audiobook. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Ty Gillian Fraser, The Spectral Knight, Ryanon, and Jampo the Mad. If you'd like to help CivilizationEx, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to see more.